Good morning. I am Ann Stillwater, and I share leadership of today's service with Ginny Sassaman. Ginny is Kathy's sister, but not only is she Kathy's sister, she has a master's degree in mediation and a certificate in positive psychology, and she has been doing this kind of lay preaching since 2012. She does sort of what JD is doing as well, going to churches and talking. And she wrote a wonderful book called Preaching Happiness. So I'm really glad to be up here with her. We welcome you to celebrate in the transformative power of religious community. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whomever you love, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. We invite you to join us for coffee hour following this morning's service, either downstairs or on Zoom. And we also have a congregational meeting at noon today. So please stick around for that, those of you who are members. Online or in person, we're glad you're here.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I am so happy to be here. This is actually the first Unitarian church that I ever stepped across the threshold decades ago. Thank you. Back in the last century, in fact, when my children went to Londonderry School, way back when Londonderry School was here. And I've been here for a variety of other reasons through the years, including my father's memorial service. Some of you may remember Hal Ellis. So this church holds a lot of meaning for me, and of course now even more meaning with my sister Kathy here, and many friends. And so I feel very grateful to be able to be of service to you. So thank you all very much for having me here this morning, and I hope I provide you with something to take home with you. The call to worship is by the Reverend Angela Herrera. This is adapted. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standing, and the world needs vision. Bring them with you, and your joy, and your passion. Bring your loving, and your courage, and your conviction. Bring your need for healing, and your powers to heal. There is work to do, and you have all that you need to do it right here in this room. So as Anne lights the chalice, Anne found a creative chalice lighting quote. This is adapted from Sylvia Boorstein. If we want to build big biceps, we need to use every opportunity to practice lifting weights. If we want to live in a way that is loving and generous and fearless, then we need to practice overcoming any tendency to be angry or greedy or confused. Life is a terrific gym. May the chalice flame remind us every situation is an opportunity to practice.
We affirm our mission to encourage, equip, and empower by reading together our affirmation of our covenant with one another, either on your phones or in the bulletin. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now please rise in body or spirit as you choose. Please join me in singing hymn number 1023 in our teal hymnal, Building Bridges, number 1023.
Building morning. Good morning. My name is Corey, and I serve as your Director of Lifespan Faith Development. I have some assistants here to help me with this story. So let's practice with the title first. So do you want to hold up your signs? So, and to think that we thought that we'd never be friends. And to think that we thought we'd never be friends. All right, so this story is by Mary Ann Hoberman. So let's begin. One day, we were playing outside in our yard when my brother got mad and he pushed me so hard that I pushed him right back with all of my might, and quick as a wink, we were having a fight. We thracked and we whacked and we walloped away, and we still might be fighting to this very day, if only our sister had not happened by. She was sipping some soda out of a cup, and since we were thirsty and tired and sore, and she said she would share if we would make up. We each took a drink and we ended our war. It's funny how quickly an argument ends, and to think that we thought we'd never be friends. That night after supper, we turned on TV. I wanted one and my sister another, and both of us hated the choice of our brother. And we would probably all would be arguing yet if our dad hadn't come in and turned off the set. So we put on pajamas and curled up on his bed, and he read us a wonderful story instead. It's funny how quickly an argument ends, and to think that we thought we'd never be friends. A day or two later, it wasn't much more. A great big new family moved in right next door. How many were in it, we couldn't quite tell, but they each played an instrument. Not very well. One played a tuba and one a bassoon. They practiced all morning and all afternoon. They practiced all evening and all through the night, and they kept us from sleeping, and that just wasn't right. So we got out of bed with a hippity hop, and we marched off together to beg them to stop. But when we arrived, they asked us to play, and they did it so nicely. What could we say? I took a whistle, my sister a flute, my brother a trumpet that gave a loud toot. My dad took a bugle, my mother a drum, and we all forgot why we had come. It's funny how quickly an argument ends, and to think that we thought we'd never be friends. Then all of a sudden we heard a loud blare as a siren came wailing from out of thin air. A police car pulled over and out jumped the police, and they told us that we were disturbing the peace. But my mother explained that the noise we had made was because we were practicing for a parade. And she said that the siren had sounded so grand that she hoped they would ride at the head of the band. It's funny how quickly an argument ends. Now this one's a little bit different. Gotcha. Now all the police had turned into our friends. We marched down the street, and each person we passed loudly complained at our ear-splitting blast. They begged us to deaden our deafening din until we invited them to all join in. We offered some boxes and kettles and spoons, and once they were playing, they all changed their tunes. Everyone was pleased by the music we made, that they became a part of the splendid parade. Friends who had squabbled started talking and settled their differences once they were walking. And they smiled at each other and marched hand in hand, keeping the beat of our wonderful band. And then we could hardly believe what we saw. Dog and cat enemies marched paw in paw. And when our procession arrived at the zoo, lions and tigers joined in with us too. It's funny how quickly unfriendliness ends, and to think that we thought we'd never be friends. Hundreds and Thousands came running to find us. Thousands and millions fell in right behind us. What a cacophony, what a commotion. Then all of a sudden we got to the ocean. We came to the place where the whole country ends, with hundreds and thousands and millions of friends. Oh, what can we do now? We started to fret. We couldn't keep marching without getting wet. Then just as we all began turning around, we heard a most odd and unusual sound. It wasn't a moan and it wasn't a cry. It wasn't a groan and it wasn't a sigh. It was more like a humming high up on the scale. A whisper, excuse me. A whisper, a whistle, a whimper, a wail. A wail? No, a whale. Yes, 100 more. And all of them swimming straight into the shore, singing their whale songs and grinning with glee. So we jumped on their backs and sailed straight out to sea. For music is magic. It soothes and it mends. And to think that we thought we'd never be friends. We crossed the wide ocean and washed up on land where people kept hearing the sound of our band. And even the ones who first came to protest, soon were parading along with the rest. And it's hard to believe, but I swear it's true. By the time we were finished and finally through, and we'd gotten back to the place we first played, the whole world was marching in one big parade. And before we disbanded, each one on our way, we voted to march every year on that day. And this is our cheer every year when it ends. Forever and ever we'll always be friends. Thank you.
Let us sing out the kiddos and everyone that's going downstairs.
Let's take a deep breath together. And let us open our hearts and minds now in a time of meditation and prayer, a time to express our joys and sorrows. Life brings both joys and sorrows, worries and triumphs. In community, we often find that sorrows shared are eased, and joys shared are multiplied. What burdens of worry or sorrow weigh heavily on you this morning? What joys or gratitudes lift your heart? We invite you to share them now through writing them on a slip of paper found at the back of the sanctuary. There's a basket to put them in, or typing them in the Zoom chat. Please indicate whether we may share your message out loud. You can also honor your joys and sorrows by placing a stone into the water of community. Please come up the middle aisle and return on the sides. Oh, well. Nobody told me how to handle that. So, up one side and down the other side of the middle aisle. Thank you. Thank you. I hadn't really realized that, so yes, come up and down the middle aisle. Spoken or unspoken, our hearts join with yours in bearing and celebrating all that life brings. We have many joys and sorrows today, which is wonderful that people are sharing what's in their hearts with this community. I'd like to share joy from Larry Byer. Granddaughter Becca will graduate tomorrow from the University of Maryland with a degree in chemical engineering, and she already has a job. And from Rachel Mark, Michael Mark is home recovering from pacemaker placement following a total bundle branch heart block. And from Arlie Henniger Voss, happy birthday to my favorite brother, Eugene. Happy birthday to you both. And from Bridget Parker, joy and gratitude for the marvelous work done by Corey Ness and all of our wonderful RE volunteers who have made this year such a success. It is wonderful to see so many children here in the sanctuary. And from Bridget and Arette Parker, we are remembering Arette's birth mother and foster mother on this special day. In all, we express joy for all the mothers who are and sorrow for those who are not. And from Rima Cameron, proud of my son Charlie, he decided to attend Cabrini University in the fall. And from Margie Schubauer-Hartman, it is with joy and sorrow that I share my father, Richard Schubauer, has chosen to stop chemotherapy and enter hospice. Ginny, could you please place one more stone in the water of community, representing the joys and sorrows that remain silent in our hearts and minds? Breathing deeply. And Ginny has.
So continuing this time of meditation and prayer, I have a reading from Sharon Salzberg from her book, Loving Kindness. I handed my passport to a uniformed Soviet official. The look he gave me was, I think, the most hateful stare I have ever received. It was an icy rage. It was the first time in my life that I experienced that kind of energy so directly and personally. I just stood there, shocked. Finally, after quite a long period of time, the official handed me back my passport and told me to go. I was very upset. I felt as though the man's energy had poisoned my being. I had absorbed his hatred, and I was reacting strongly to it. Then, in one moment, everything shifted. I thought, if being exposed to his energy could make me feel so terrible after 10 minutes, what would it be like to live inside that energetic vibration all the time? I realized that this man might wake up, spend much of the day, and go to sleep in a state quite similar to the one I had just experienced from him. A tremendous feeling of compassion came into me for him. He was no longer a threatening enemy, but rather someone in what seemed to be intense suffering. Now I invite you to share in a moment of silence, after which we will sing Spirit of Life.
Oh, by the way, I am hoping to avoid carpal tunnel surgery, which is why I'm wearing this, or at least postpone it. So, I am conflicted about conflict. Probably because my childhood was filled with conflicting messages about conflict. Over the last few months, I've been looking more closely at the conflict that I feel between people-pleasing and the authentic self-care, living my life, making space for myself in my own life that I would like. Looking at these childhood messages around it has been a turning point. Recently, I had an uncomfortable reminder of this. A young adult friend, the child of one of JD's childhood friends, died very violently and suddenly last month. JD went to the out-of-state memorial service without me since I had previous commitments. Seemingly inexplicably, I began to feel desperate and overwhelmed with responsibilities, and the feeling started to squeeze out sideways as conflict with myself and others. I thought I knew better, but there I was, and feeling more and more desperate every day, talking too much, also known as verbal diarrhea, overthinking all the time, like if it was appropriate to make a simple request of my spouse or boss, feeling like I should not have needs, was not worthy of getting what I wanted or needed. Then I reminded myself that I've been here before, and I know how to help myself get out of craziness. I prioritized real self-care, which for me meant getting into some natural water, a creek, which has always helped me reboot in the past. And then in that cold, refreshing water, I started to cry. I had been stuffing my feelings around that tragic death. I didn't want to admit how hard it had hit me, how much it reminded me of another death with similarly devastated parents. That is normal grief, to connect back to all the previous losses. But last month, I didn't want to take the time or emotional energy to honor my true feelings. Instead, I was doing what I thought the folks around me expected of me, and I thought about their needs over my own. I didn't want to acknowledge the grief, even to myself. These are the hardest conflicts for me, the conflicts within myself, reverting back to my people-pleasing, everything is fine mode, while inside my soul cries or screams for attention. Am I willing to live my authentic feelings, or will I keep on being conflicted about my own conflicts? Dealing with the inner conflicts leads to fewer conflicts with others. And last night, about bedtime actually, my spouse suggested I add one more thing to this reflection. Hanging over his desk is a meme from @OxfordBoy that says, "Yesterday I sat with my anger until it told me its true name," said the boy. "What is it?" asked the ox. Grief. Grief. I really appreciated the motivation to take time to look at conflict in my life more deeply. Thank you, Jenny. And I am still conflicted about conflict, but I've been reminded that by looking deeper, I may find a way through. And now I'm looking forward to our special music.
all right. Think of what I'm saying. We can work it out and get it straight, or say goodnight. We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is very short, and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. I have always thought that it's a crime, so I will ask you once again. Try to see it my way. Only time will tell if I am right or I am wrong. While you see it your way, there's a chance that we might fall apart before too long. We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is very short, and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. I have always thought that it's a crime, so I will ask you once again. Try to see it my way. Only time will tell if I am right or I am wrong. While you see it your way, there's a chance that we might fall apart before too long. We can work it out. We can work it out.
Well, thank you, special musicians. That was special indeed. And thank you, Anne, for that heartfelt and thoughtful reflection. I have a reading this morning. The poet only has one name, Rosemary. It's called The Question. All day, I replay these words. Is this the path of love? I think of them as I rise, as I wake my children, as I wash dishes, as I drive too close behind the slow blue Subaru. Is this the path of love? Think of these words as I stand in line at the grocery store. Think of them as I sit on the couch with my daughter. Amazing how quickly 6 words become compass, the new lens through which to see myself in the world. I notice what the question is not. Not, is this right? Not, is this wrong? It just longs to know how the action of existence links us to the path of love. And is it this? Is it this? All day, I let myself be led by the question. All day, I let myself not be too certain of the answer. Is it this? Is this the path of love? I ask as I wait for the next word to come. I'm not sure if Anne mentioned that I live in Vermont. So I live in Vermont, and I have a question for all of you, which is, how many of you have ever visited Vermont in the fall? Quite a few. It is, in fact, gorgeous. Warm, sunny, cerulean blue skies filled with puffy white clouds, towering evergreens, and brilliant foliage. A perfect landscape for hiking. So one of those days last September, I made plans with a dear friend, I'll call her Joanne, to join a third friend at a trailhead a few miles away. Joanne said she'd pick me up around 1:45. By 2, I was anxious. I texted both friends, no response. I contacted Joanne's husband, who said she had left a while ago. My upset was building as I drove to the trailhead. Both friends' cars were parked there. I got out and I called to them. No answer. Driving home, I was hurt and angry. I texted Joanne, laid out my version of what had happened, and made sure she knew that I was really chuffed to be left behind. So a few hours later, Joanne showed up at my door. I let her in, but only grudgingly. I was not yet ready to give up on my anger. But she dove right into the heart of the matter with an immediate, sincere apology, an explanation of how and why she'd messed up, and a present, a feather that she had picked up on the trail. She asked me to forgive her. How could I not? She was so loving and brave in our little conflict, creative even. The feather was a nice touch. Thus, our friendship was strengthened. Yes, she made a mistake, and yes, my feelings were hurt, but the care that she took to immediately fix things is what matters to me now. That is conflict at its best, a path to love. Joanne inviting me into the conflict was an act of love. My accepting that invitation, however grudgingly, was also an act of love. Totally ordinary and absolutely extraordinary. So I first learned that conflict can be a tool of love when I was in mediation graduate school. During a discussion on conflict styles, the teacher labeled me a conflict avoider. Not exactly high praise for an aspiring mediator. I went to the bathroom and started crying, telling myself, that's not true. I never avoid conflict with my husband. And then the light bulb lit up. With whom, I thought, do I have my best relationship? My husband. The connection was clear. Positive conflict resolution is an act of love. And, as Anne also mentioned, I still wish I could avoid it. Anybody else feel that way? I regularly have to encourage myself to be brave and loving in conflict, and I hope I can encourage you as well by providing some perhaps new ways of understanding conflict and some suggestions on how to reach more satisfying results. First, I want to note conflict is a massive and complex topic. It takes place on every level, from within our own brains and hearts to international wars. There can be major power differentials, and personal safety could be threatened. So I'm not addressing such dangerous and difficult situations today, and would always urge you to do what you need to do to be safe. I am focusing instead on interpersonal conflicts in relatively healthy situations, because that's where we can best practice conflict resolution skills and build our understanding and our capacity. So to start, here's the most important thing I learned, not in mediation school, but while studying positive psychology. We are all human. Beautiful, complicated, biological creatures with both built-in and learned biases. Tal Ben-Shahar, who was my happiness teacher, taught us this phrase, permission to be human. We are well served to recognize the built-in tendencies we all share. Now, that doesn't mean permission to do harm. Rather, it's accepting that our brains come wired in certain ways. Think for a moment of cats, those cuddly, purring, sadistic murderers whose actions frequently make no sense to us humans. They have their wiring and we have ours. Thankfully, humans also have the power to reason, and our reasoning abilities are overrated. One of the books we read in graduate school was called Descartes' Error: Emotion, Reason, and the Human Brain by neurobiologist Antonio Damasio. Damasio referenced French philosopher René Descartes, who supposedly said, "I think, therefore I am." Damasio says, based on our biology, what Descartes should have said was, "I feel, therefore I am." So all too often in a conflict, we can get angry at each other or at ourselves for being too emotional, not rational enough. But emotions are lodged in the oldest part of our brains and can easily overpower our reasoning. Permission to be human. We have lots of feelings. On the plus side, we humans also have lots of gray matter and can continue to learn better ways to behave. I personally continue to learn. Just a couple of months back, Nobel Prize-winning behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman, my favorite economist, just published a study showing that noise gets in the way of good judgment. So that was interesting. But a few years ago, Kahneman and his team blew me away when they published a chart on 24 cognitive biases, which we all have and which, they say, make our judgments irrational. A cognitive bias, they say, means there's a kind of misfiring going on which causes us to lose objectivity. So one bias is called reactance, which means we'd rather do the opposite of what someone is trying to make us do. Then there's the confirmation bias, which causes us to look for ways to justify our existing beliefs, or groupthink, or one I definitely fall prey to, and I suspect I'm not the only one in this room, the just world hypothesis, or our belief in a just world makes us think that it actually exists. So it would take years of studying to internalize all of Kahneman's wisdom and then apply it to real life. Instead, it helps me to know our brains are very busy places with lots of unknown ways of behaving. We can barely understand ourselves. How can we understand and judge others? Here's another way I like to look at our busy, busy brains. One of my favorite grad school exercises was all about the rule books that we each have in our brains. To illustrate, we were told to pretend that we had been invited to dinner on Friday night at 6 p.m. Then we wrote down what time we would intend to actually show up. So what time would any of you go shout out what time you would show up? 5:45? 6:05? Lots of different times, right? So in my graduate school group, the times ranged from 5:30 till 7 o'clock. And everyone had a very specific reason for their choice. In other words, a rule in their heads. 2 women from the Midwest said, absolutely get there at 5:30 to help. On the other end, a woman from New York City said, if you get there before 7 o'clock, the host will still be in her bathrobe. So I can't even begin to imagine how many rules we each unknowingly carry around, which naturally leads to conflicts. Since we all have different rules based on unique life experiences, we break each other's rules all the time. Sometimes I have the presence of mind to wonder whether someone has upset me due to a broken rule in my head, but not theirs. And then I wonder, does it matter? Or is the rule outdated? One of my husband Bob's rules is, you must never wear baseball caps inside. I asked him once where that rule came from, and he explained that his father had drilled it into his head when he was a boy. But more recently, we had lunch with his father at Applebee's, and his father wore his bright orange baseball cap the whole time. So maybe it's worth re-examining some of the rules at the heart of our disputes. Although some rules absolutely we want to keep and defend. Others, not so much. One more piece of grad school advice that I want to share with you, another piece that you might find helpful, is that under most conflict circumstances, you can make choices. When to engage in the conflict, where to have your difficult conversation, even how you want to engage in conflict. You might start with, what is your goal? Do you want to win? Do you want to just walk away? Do you want to give in? Compromise? Or work together to find a situation that works best for everyone involved? So each choice corresponds with one of 5 universally recognized conflict styles. We each have a dominant style, but we also have the capacity to choose a style more appropriate for any situation. One quick example, in the early years of my marriage, I prided myself on being able to out-talk my introverted husband and therefore win every argument. Fortunately, somewhere along the way I realized winning an argument is not the same as building a happy relationship. It was not the path of love. Now we try to use the problem-solving style together. So perhaps the most important and loving thing any one of us can do is listen deeply, including to ourselves, and then take appropriate action. Listen not just to the facts of the matter, or rather the facts as each of you believe to be true, but listen also to the emotions both of you are feeling, or all of you. No conflict is just about data. Remember Antonio Damasio, we are emotional beings who also think. Listen to understand, not to prepare your response. What does this conflict look and feel like from the other person's point of view? Of course, you would also like to be understood, and that can be another bonus of good listening. When you model what that looks like, it is more possible that your conflict partner will follow suit. So listen and act with compassion, courage, curiosity, and creativity. First, compassion. Just look at what a complicated mass of cells we all are, not to mention the wounds of life that we carry with us. We live in a pretty tough world. At an Economics of Happiness conference I went to in 2017, I'll never forget this, we were told, treat everyone kindly, because everyone we meet is a victim of brutal capitalism. Everyone. We're all being squeezed. So, compassion, for sure. for self and others, especially in a conflict. Second, courage. Initiating a difficult conversation is a very vulnerable thing to do. Among other things, the overture can be rejected. Last fall, when my friend knocked on my door, I nearly did reject her. When you do get the conversation started, more courage is called for. Who will listen first to the other's story? When people are heard, they soften, they begin to listen, they open to possibilities. But one obstacle is we each need to be heard before we can hear the other. So the question is, who goes first? That takes courage. Certainly, staying on the path of love throughout the conflict takes continued courage and determination. It's so easy to be defensive or triggered and respond in non-helpful ways. Conflict is messy and non-linear. So be brave, keep your eye on the real prize. Third, curiosity. This is a big one because we often don't know what's going on. Certainly we can jump to false conclusions about folks we don't know very well, what they did and why, all of it perhaps totally erroneous. But this can happen even with those closest to us. I think often of an op-ed I read by a brilliant Vermont therapist. She wrote that she had almost divorced her husband because of his troubling behavior, not realizing that he had early onset dementia. Her not knowing always reminds me to stay curious. Furthermore, the more you learn in general, the more you know what the nub of the problem really is, and then the better you can fix whatever is broken. So this is where creativity comes into the picture. You don't actually want to turn to creative solutions too soon because A, you might not know enough yet, and B, we are less creative when tension and negativity are running high. After the listening, the compassion, the curiosity, the door then is open for creativity to come to the table. Positive psychologist Barbara Fredrickson coined a term for this: broaden and build. We broaden our capacity with more positive emotions, and then we can build better solutions. As a mediator, I've been amazed at how creative disputants can be when they finally get to the point of wanting to work together. For many years, I was a coach for mediation students in role play exercises. The same role plays came up over and over: the three roommates, the lake house, the therapist bill. I saw the same starting point repeatedly, but I saw so many different solutions. When the students were able to get to a place where they wanted the best possible solution, there was so much creativity. So creativity isn't always needed in conflict, but it may be helpful more often than you would expect. I just read an advice column in the Washington Post. The reader wondered, should she spend more or less time with a difficult but struggling friend? The columnist suggested expanding the options. Maybe find different ways to spend time. Maybe find other sources of comfort for the struggling friend. Open up the possibilities. Sometimes creativity is an absolute necessity in the conflict resolution process, especially in complicated situations. Here, collaborative creativity, brainstorming, can help you all craft a solution that works best for everybody. The alternative to that could be fighting the same battle over and over again. So, compassion, courage, curiosity, and creativity. They don't hold all the answers, but they are incredibly helpful companions on the conflict path to love. And that is what I wish for each of you today. Not a life or even a day free from conflict, but rather a life filled with positive conflict resolution that takes you ever further down the path of love. May it be so.
Thank you, Ginny. I learned a lot. Very helpful. The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is, as always, a freely gathered group of people, free people. This church is created, sustained, and supported by you. Each month, we share half our Sunday plate with a local nonprofit organization. For the month of May, we are sharing with our own church's Oliver Legrone Scholarship Fund. The scholarship for graduates of Harrisburg's public high schools provides not only financial support, but also a mentor to provide advice and guidance during their post-secondary education. The scholarship is named for Oliver Legrone, who was a sculptor. This is one of his pieces here. There's Harriet Tubman outside, I think. And also an ardent supporter of UCH. Oliver Legrone Scholarship is a cause that is near and dear to my heart, since I am in the unusual position of having two mentees, but who are both intelligent, caring, and delightful. If you wish to contribute online, visit uchbg.org for options. Your financial support and commitment matter. Thank you. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this congregation, weaving a tapestry of compassion and action, faith and fellowship, hope and wholeness. And now, please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn in your teal hymnal, number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, 1008.
When our heart is in a holy place,
As Anne extinguishes the chalice, I have a blessing from John O'Donohue, the Irish poet and sage, from his book, To Bless the Space Between Us, a book of blessings. When the gentleness between you hardens and you fall out of your belonging with each other, may the depths you have reached hold you still. When no true word can be said or heard, and you mirror each other in the script of hurt, when even the silence has become raw and torn, may you hear again an echo of your first music. When the weave of affection begins to unravel and anger starts to sear the ground between you, before this weather of grief invites the black seed of bitterness to find root, may your souls come to kiss. Now is the time for one of you to be gracious, to allow a kindness beyond thought and hurt. Reach out with sure hands to take the chalice of your love and carry it carefully through this echoless waste until the winter pilgrimage leads you toward the gateway to spring. Thank you.